Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Chasity Galyon. Looking forward to our conversation today, Chasity.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. So, thriving adoptees. What comes to mind when you hear this, Chasity?
Well, for me personally, and I think it very much ties into the theme of adoption, but for me to thrive, I need to know that I'm number one, safe and that I'm loved. And when I am feeling safe and loved, then I'm more likely to show up authentically in my relationships. And so I think that's true for many people, if not all. I don't want to blanket it, but I would think most
Yeah.
people would feel the same.
Yeah. Well, you are safe and you
Thank
are
you.
loved.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna hold that for you for the
I
next hour or
appreciate
so.
that.
Okay. And I know you're not really worried that I wasn't going to do that, right?
No.
You weren't expecting people, listeners, if you haven't, if you haven't met me or if you haven't been on the show, uh, I always meet, pretty much always meet guests before. 99% of the time I meet guests before. So if they show up for when we agree the second uh, the second conversation for the podcast, then presumably they have felt some degree of safety with me during the first one, right? I have had occasions, I have had occasions on which that people have not gone through with it. I think one occasion,
Mhm.
a conscious decision, um, and but as we talk, I think about a conversation I had with a fellow adoptee about probably 4 years ago. And we met on Facebook, I think, and said,
Mhm.
um, should we have a chat on Zoom?
Mhm.
So we met her on Zoom and I said, she's in the UK. I said, so where are you? She said, well, I'm in the northwest of England, right? So I'm in the northeast of England. So I said, where? But I was adopted from the northwest. So
Mhm.
I asked her where. Um, and she said something like, I don't think it's appropriate for me to share that. So
Okay.
clearly she didn't
Yeah.
feel that safe.
Yeah. Well, vulnerability is a hard thing. I think we go through our life, with our egos want to protect. And so, depending on our experiences in life, we may have had to have a high degree of self-protection. And sometimes our emotions, we don't feel safe with our own emotions. And so, things like that can open up things that we've been holding very closely. And sometimes we're just not ready.
Yeah. What what does ego mean to you?
I do think it is a self-protective measure. Um, and I think there's value in it to a degree. But when we live there too much and too long, I think it can really hinder our ability to express our true self and hinder that ability for true connection with others because we all have times where we put up masks and walls and for whatever reason. Um, but I don't think that is where we thrive. I think we thrive when we do feel that safe connection with other people because we're created for community and connection. Um, that's part of our humanity. And when that gets broken or harmed in some way, I think that that ego or those walls can go up to make sure we don't feel that again, understandably.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
My cup's overflowing now because this is my love to go to space.
Yes. Well, I don't mind talking about the deep topics because I think when people are willing to have those conversations, it can just benefit other people so much. And it creates that element of safety with another person. When somebody goes first and says, I'm going to share or I'm going to be vulnerable with you, then it gives them the opportunity to do the same.
Yeah.
And that's where you connect.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure where to go from there. So I'll go back to the I'll go back to the question that I just I'll go back to the question that that I was going to ask, but I've had a silly idea, so
Mhm.
I'll just share that anyway, right?
Sure.
So Chastity's in Knoxville, if I remember that, right?
Correct.
Yeah, Knoxville, um, and which is Tennessee,
Hmm.
and I live in Hunsinger, right? So the village that I live in, I'm not worried. I'm not. I feel sufficiently safe to
Hmm.
say more be more specific about my location than the northeast of England, right? So
Right.
I'm in Hunsinger. So if anybody wants to check me out, you can go onto the website, and I'm in a place called Hunsinger. Sounds a bit funny, but yeah. Um, Hunsingore. So ego. To me, you talked about it being a self-protective measure,
Mhm.
and that would indicate to me that it's about something that we do rather than something that we are. Does that make any sense?
Mm, yes.
Not
I
completely,
think it's a,
though.
yeah, that's next level. Um, yeah, obviously our personality is a part of who we are, like our ego, but it's shaped by our experiences in some regard. Um, and I think it's somewhat malleable. I think that um, growth and self-awareness can lead us to a place where our ego isn't dominating. Um, because I do feel like it is somewhat of a mask.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, something that we do versus who we are, that's deeply philosophical.
yeah,
And I love that. But
yeah.
yeah,
Me
that,
too.
yeah.
Me too. To bring it back up a little notch before we go drop deeper, right? I heard where the word and mask came from last week.
Mhm. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It was, I presume it was on a podcast,
Hmm.
a podcast and an audiobook. Um, and it's so it's Latin, it's Latin, it's Roman,
Hmm.
it's from there. But the mask was about in days before Hollywood movies
Hmm.
and special effects uh, and and British movies as well, right? Pinewood and
Hmm.
Universe, where they make the James Bond stuff, which is now owned by Amazon, isn't it? Is he?
Probably.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
Anyway,
surprised.
by the way, so what they did is the actor would put a mask on their face to show the character that they were that they were then playing.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're nodding like you've heard this too, right?
No, it just
Well,
makes total
it makes
sense.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah. And
it
even plugging it
makes sense.
into what we were saying previously.
Yeah, yeah. So putting a mask on is a doing thing, isn't it?
Mhm. It is. It is. Yeah.
It's a doing thing, not a being thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because it's not the authentic self. It's the wall. It's what we put around us to protect ourselves or put in front of us to present ourselves as acceptable to someone else or or to protect.
Yeah.
which I think presenting ourselves as acceptable to someone else and what we think that may be is protecting ourselves in many ways.
Yeah,
But but to thrive, to feel, I think there's this uneasy feeling that I have when I'm not being true to who I am. And it can wear me down and exhaust me very quickly. Um, because it takes a lot of energy and effort to put on a mask and to put up walls and to hold those walls up, versus being who you are
yeah.
authentic. So, yeah.
Because we talk about the ego like it's an identity, like it's a
Mhm.
thing. We talk
Mhm.
about it like it's a noun rather than a verb.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Um,
It's definitely something to consider.
so I mean, it is the noun is the ego and the mask. It, are they the same, or to what extent are they different, similar to you, in your opinion?
I think it probably can begin as a verb, but maybe transforms to a noun over time, because I think we can get lost in that and lose the truth of our identity and who we are when we integrate that ego into the self. And then it can become a part of our identity. Maybe initially, I don't know, maybe it initially does. I mean, you think about, are you familiar with the actor Jim Carrey?
Yeah,
Okay, so I've heard him talk before, and he even talks about his Jim Carrey as himself. It was um, a character he played, and I think that that character he played became himself until he started to grow and release some of that. But he just popped in my head as somebody that has talked about that somewhat. But I do think that yes, that those protections that we put into play, those are things that we do, but then they can become who we are. Um, if we have to play that role too much and too long. And it takes a lot of self-awareness and probably a lot of work to get through that. Because it's so much easier to look through the eyes of a mask at somebody else than to look behind our own mask and acknowledge those things that we have put into place that maybe helped us for a time. Um, but as we grow and as we want to connect with others, sometimes those things don't continue to help us. A child in a situation that's not safe learns how to behave in that situation to protect themselves. And then as they get older, they carry that into those relationships with other people. And they're still playing that role to protect themselves, but it doesn't serve them anymore. And so, it maybe that's holding people at a distance, or um, not feeling the freedom to try to connect or be real with somebody. Everybody's situation is different. Even in the realm of adoption, um, there's science even behind what we're talking about, beyond the philosophy and the psychology of it, but even just connection and how that is created, at very special, sensitive developmental periods in our life. And so things like that can be put into us so early beyond our formal ability to be conscious of it, and so it kind of does become who we are to an extent. Um, I don't know if that makes sense or
I think it's beautiful. Yeah, I'm just giving you space.
yeah.
I think it's beautiful. I tend to see the world a bit black and white, a bit and no, many ors, not
Mhm.
ands. Right?
Right.
Do you get what I mean? So
Right.
I said to you probably, is it a
Hmm.
verb or is it a noun? Is it
Yeah.
something? Well, is it a verb? Yeah, is it a verb? Is it
Yes
or is
and
it a
yes.
noun? And so I kind of introduced because I do have a opinion
Hmm. Hmm.
on that, and I
Right.
do think it is I do think it is a verb.
Hmm.
However, you've given me, you've taken me to a next level because I think that both maybe, I think you're right. I think
Mhm,
it does. I think what is, when when you start talking about behavior,
mhm,
you talked about barriers,
mhm,
uh, then that made safe, that made it clear to me that what starts off as an activity becomes an identity.
mhm,
And we forget,
mhm,
we forget, we don't spot the tipping point.
mhm.
Um, a quote that sticks with me from a coach guy who's very influential to me. He said, "It's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame."
Mm,
And you've alluded to, well, not
yeah.
alluded, you've used the word self-awareness at least
Mhm,
two occasions I can remember in the last
mhm.
20 minutes. So we don't notice. I guess I'm drawing that out as I'm drawing that out as an inflection, a learning point for me that, yeah, I don't remember that occurring.
Right,
I don't remember the moment when the activity became an identity. It's
right,
very opaque. It's very hard. It's not in my memory.
right,
I don't recall it. I don't have
right,
words. I don't have a yeah. I don't have a words for it before.
right. I think that's all of us. We have that, we have our blind spots and then we have, like you say, and not that I would consider that a blind spot per se, but I think that's why we need at least to be willing to connect with others um, so that we can grow. Um, and I think that's a lifelong thing. Um, and it starts from the very beginning with that safety and love that we receive from the moment we enter this world or don't receive.
Yeah,
Um, so, and those are those moments we don't remember, but it gets buried into our consciousness or our subconsciousness rather. And it drives the bus sometimes. But I don't know. I work in adoption. Um, I'm an adoptive mom, and I experienced adoption as a child, not in the fullest sense that some people go through, but my stepfather adopted me when I was in preschool. And so I do have some of those experiences of not knowing my father. And um, it's very clear to me that those things played into who I am, who I've become, but they're not necessarily who, I guess I should back up. I guess who I am has been shaped somewhat by those things, but it's not the fullness of who I am. It's something that happened in my life that had an impact on me. Um, but I think that even people who have not experienced adoption or don't even have any connection to adoption experience these things as well to an extent. I think it's the experience of life and relationships. We're going to have um, moments where we don't feel safe and loved at different points in our life. We're going to have broken attachments, and heartbreak, and those different things. But I think that um, the best thing that we can do for others, for children, is to get that love and safety very early during those sensitive periods, um, so that they're less likely to use the ego as a self-protective measure. We're all going to do it. I mean, all of us um, have that. That's a part of what we do, and um, but I know even in working with adoptive families, a lot of them think I'm just going to love this child and everything will be fine. Um, but something I've been exploring lately too in that regard is yes, you have to have that as a foundation in all of your relationships, bringing that safety and love to other people. But we also have to consider their receptiveness of it and how they perceive it. Because I can bring all the love in the world to someone, but that doesn't mean that they're going to feel loved or feel safe. And so their experiences are going to help paint what that's going to look like. Um, so,
I've heard the ego defined as the separate self.
mm, yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's kind of like that big brother that you can bring with you wherever you go. The big brother that can fight off the bullies if you need him to.
Yeah. And I was thinking about how you, how you, how I connect, how I express adoption stuff
Mhm,
to a non-adoptee or maybe
mhm,
somebody who hasn't got who isn't a non-adoptee who doesn't work in
mhm,
and I was thinking about bullying actually, and I was thinking about that that sense of being othered.
mhm,
Most
mhm,
kids get bullied when they so I got bullied for having buck teeth,
mhm,
like rabbit teeth. I got bullied for going to a different school to everybody else and
mhm,
being a
mhm.
posh school.
Yeah.
I got bullied for uh, not drinking tea, which I'm sure to an American would sound very. That
I love tea.
this we just have. But if you most people have been bullied, and
Mhm,
I guess that gives a felt sense of being separate.
mhm,
That's and that is the fragility of
mhm,
the ego. Use the word vulnerable earlier on. That's a vulnerable,
mhm.
fragile feeling that most people have been there. People
Right.
have been there. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've got that. With all that felt, we've all felt the felt sense of oneness.
Mhm,
Whether that's well, why don't I ask you that? Have you do any examples come to your mind when I ask you the question? So when do you feel at one with others? When do you sense oneness rather than separation? When do you separate? When do you
mhm.
feel oneness?
Wow. I've spent a good chunk of my life feeling that other, for one reason or another. Um, but feeling that oneness, it feels like acceptance. Um, and it feels more rare than common. And I don't know if that's typical or if that's me, but it's
I
hard
think
to.
it's typical. I think it's
You think
typical.
it's
Yeah.
typical? Yeah, I hope so. Um, but yeah, I mean, to feel that oneness, it's a rare thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Does an example come to mind? A time come
my
to mind?
granddaughter, I feel that with her. I have a granddaughter and she's still young. She's almost 2, but There's just so much unconditional love, and she's so free, and she hasn't been shaped by the world so much yet. And so it's just wide open with her. And I love that. I have a friend that I feel that way with. She's very accepting of me, and I can talk freely. I don't have to screen my words with her. I don't have to feel like she's going to misunderstand me or judge me for how I'm feeling. That feels very much like that oneness in those relationships. Um, but again, I feel like I can be myself, and I can be vulnerable and just true to who I am. Um, More real and less ego. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Do any group settings come to mind?
group settings. Hmm, group settings are harder. Um, I tend to introvert in group settings unless I feel um, that I'm within something that involves an area of expertise, maybe.
Yeah.
I might feel a little more one in that regard, but you put me in a group setting with a bunch of people I don't know, and I'm definitely more inclined to go into my shell. I detest situations like that because, again, it creates that uneasiness because I have such a strong desire to be authentic in who I am, but don't always feel like I can be because of the hierarchies and the social dynamics that are at
Yeah,
play that I just have such a disdain for.
yeah.
But yeah.
I feel that. I feel that too.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to ask you, do you go to church? Church goer?
Yeah, yes and no. I do. I am a believer. I am a person of faith, deeply spiritual. Um, and but I also find that aspect of church to be hard. And so I find myself often, you know, watching at home, with my husband and kids. And then I have guilt sometimes about that because there's that religious aspect of that brings the guilt. You should be at church. Um, but um, my faith obviously it doesn't stop if I'm not in church. Obviously, it can be enhanced by going to church. And if the goal is to worship God and not socialize, then, mission accomplished. But
Okay.
socializing in that arena, it is hard.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because I was making some notes for a presentation I'm doing, and I was trying to come up with felt 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 sense of oneness things,
mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
situations,
mm-hmm,
and all of them involve music.
mm,
And so for me, I, and all of them, yeah, all involved music, and
mm,
specifically they
yeah,
all involved
mm-hmm,
singing.
right.
Right.
That makes sense.
So I've I've heard who was it? Was it Beyonce, or was it somebody did the Star Spangled Banner
Uh-huh.
before the Super Bowl? She, um, I don't know but when I hear it, I'm not American. That sends shivers down my spine, right?
Yeah.
I have the same feeling listening to the Scottish national anthem before a
Mm-hmm.
Scottish
Mm-hmm.
rugby match. I'm not Scottish either.
Yeah.
I know that people touch that space singing
Mm-hmm.
in the congregation at a choir.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, an interesting point that you made about the socialization, right? This isn't the
Mm-hmm.
socialization part of church. This
Mm-hmm.
is the hymn part of
Mm-hmm.
church. And I've also felt that in rock concerts
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
where everybody is one. There's the there's a felt sense of
Mm-hmm.
of oneness,
Mm-hmm.
and separation has gone out of the window.
Yeah.
And when you said, uh, I haven't had many, I think you said, not many ideas come to mind, not many examples came to your mind. Is that unusual, or is that human? I said, yeah, that's human, because when I think about it, not, I have to think about it for them to come to my mind. And
Mm-hmm.
when they do come to my mind, they really stand out.
Mm-hmm.
They stand out. There's an
Yeah.
emotional charge
Yeah.
that goes with those moments,
Right.
where we fall into our sense of oneness
Mm-hmm.
and authenticity, to use your
Mm-hmm.
word. I think I think authenticity, and it's almost like a revelation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking there's a chapter of the Bible called Revelations, and I don't know what it is about. Right?
There
Um,
is. Yes.
because I went to a school where we listened to a reading every morning.
Mm-hmm.
We sang a hymn every morning. Nobody was particularly invested in it, but it was the
Mm-hmm.
done thing. That's what we done. I didn't
Yeah.
feel a felt sense of oneness
Mm-hmm.
then. I don't think, really.
Right.
Maybe I wasn't attuned to it. Um, but the oneness, I believe that the oneness is revealed really infrequently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
it
most of the
is.
time, it's the
It is.
separation
Because we're
that's
all
winning.
walking around protecting ourselves from everybody else.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's our default. Um, and that's,
it's
you
our
know,
default. Okay, all right.
yeah.
So gotcha. No, I think you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it is for adults. I think it's our
Mhm.
default.
For adults, for
uh,
sure. Yes.
Adults. So you know where I'm going with this one.
Hmm.
You want to get ahead of me?
I mean, obviously, there's lots of things that play into it, but I mean, I think a lot of adults are walking around as wounded children. We get those wounds early. And I think sometimes as children, we don't have the means to process it. We don't have, and I don't know if this is where you were going, but
You're
um,
way ahead of me. In a way, Becky,
okay.
I'm glad that I didn't open my trap and give my
Oh,
philosophy. This is way better.
oh, well, that's
That's a
sweet.
compliment, by the way.
Oh,
Take
thank
the
you.
compliment.
But yeah, I mean, I think as adults, we're um, so many of us are still 10 years old and we're reacting to whatever that was that happened at 10 years old or 2 years old or whatever it may be. Because we can't, when we were in those moments, we did not have the tools we needed to manage whatever it was. And that's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's like my son who came to me at 4 years old. He created these survival mechanisms for what he went through, and it was hard to deal with as an adult dealing with this child, but it wasn't his fault. And so helping him have the tools to process what he's been through, while also managing the fact that his behaviors and what he's going through is now triggering what I didn't manage when I was a young child and I'm still carrying around as an adult. It's a lot. I don't think there's a straight answer or cure to fix it all because of our humanity. Um, and I hate to say that because I mean, I guess I could never fully envision a utopia apart from, my beliefs spiritually because humans are rough. They do a lot of things. We do a lot of damage to each other and intentionally or unintentionally. mostly unintentionally, I like to believe. But nevertheless, there's consequences to all of it. And there's a lot of pain that people carry. Um, and some of that's primal and deep and subconscious, and some of it we have very clear memories of, like the bullying or whatever it may be. And a lot of times we walk around and we hold that in and we carry it by ourselves. And so that barrier keeps us, that feeling that we are other and alone, and it's just ours to bear and carry. I think that does keep us from thriving. It does keep us from moving forward. So,
You used the word malleable
mm,
early, which I
mm-hmm,
really love.
mm-hmm,
And I'm wondering, you whether does a metaphor come to your? I haven't got one up my sleeve, right? So sometimes I do ask a question that I've got an answer for. This time, no clue, right? To be transparent.
Sure.
Um, does a metaphor come to mind for malleability in the context that you've just been describing?
I think there's a lot of barriers to it, but um, one, I think one of the first steps is it's real easy to blame people for being people. And when our focus is on blaming that person, um, for whatever the wound was that occurred, I think that can keep us stuck and prevent that malleability from occurring. I think it's when we release the blame and recognize that we actually have some control over how we're thinking about something, how we can respond, and how we can move forward, then I think that malleability can occur, because it's real easy to get stuck in um, different mentalities, whether it's I'm a victim of this, or this is my fault, or this is their fault, or whatever it may be. And we just create these, I guess, negative pathways in our brain that we get stuck in. Um, but, and it can be painful to acknowledge those things that help get us unstuck. And I think that's the hard thing, because we hold on to those things because they're our big brother protecting us, but in the end they're not really. um
Yeah, I meant to ask you about that Big Brother thing, the Big
yeah.
Brother
Hmm.
uh, metaphor, the thing that you said, because so much of, well, we've been talking 40 minutes or so now, right?
Hmm.
I think that's the only thing that has got jarred.
Mm.
Jarred's probably too big a word,
Hmm.
right? But it's the only thing I thought, oh, I don't get that.
Mm.
We've expressed some slightly different opinions,
Hmm.
and we've largely been of one heart, I believe. We have different opinions, but
Hmm.
and I've understood. Hope, hopefully you've understood what I said, and because I
Yeah.
feel like I've understood what you said.
Yeah.
Apart from that little thing about the Big Brother, so can you share a little bit more about, in case it's not
Yeah.
just me?
Well, that's probably maybe that's a little bit of a personal slip
Oh,
that came out in conversation. So I'm the oldest in my family. Always wished that I had a big brother. Um, didn't always feel protected by those I should have been protected by. So I think that's probably where that comes from a little
Okay.
bit. So, you know, I create that part of my ego that quite honestly, it's my tendency is to jump in to protect others, and I do that much more easily than I do myself.
Wow.
Um, and it's because I always wish that I had that person, that big brother, so to speak, that would be the protector, that would be that protective. And so as I see the ego as that protective factor, it's kind of like that big brother standing in front of
Okay.
me saying, "You're not gonna mess with her." So does that make more
See,
sense?
now it makes perfect sense.
Gotcha.
And it also, in a kind of goosebumpy moment for me here, uh, what, 3,500 miles away from you, but only a foot by the screen, it is that uh, I did I did an, have you heard of EFT?
EFT, is
EFT.
that like a therapy?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Tapping,
Yes.
EFT,
Mm-hmm.
emotional freedom technique.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's called. Yeah, right. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed a fellow adoptee, Daniel Godet, last week, and she's been on the show loads, like probably third or fourth time she's been on,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about EFT, and
Mm-hmm.
I asked her afterwards, well, why don't we give it a go? Because it is
Mm-hmm.
something that is far easier to experience than it is to talk about, right?
Right.
So somehow we managed to talk about it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's more it's an experience rather than a conversation. And so I did it. She said, yeah, and I did it, and it was brilliant, and it plays straight into this, right? And it's about going big when we feel small,
Wow. Wow.
going big,
Mm.
and 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 for me, what was going on was um, getting angry when I feel out of control.
Mm.
And the metaphor that she had for it was the puffer fish, right? It puffs itself up
Yeah.
to make it seem bigger,
Mm-hmm.
so the predators
Mm-hmm.
don't attack it
Right.
because they think it's bigger than it actually is.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah.
that feels kind of huge. And isn't it interesting that the big insight came off the back of uh, the big insight for me came off the back of the bit that I didn't understand about what you said.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's I think and it's a little piece of self-awareness for myself that came out naturally in the conversation with you because it's not something I've consciously
No.
broke down um other than talking with you today in that regard, that big brother um ego, so to speak. But it makes perfect sense because my life has been um kind of pulled in that direction to be a protector for vulnerable people. Um, so yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Have you come across IFS? Have you come across?
No, what is that?
Stands for Internal Family Systems.
Okay. Oh, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah,
We may have mentioned that in our
yeah,
conversation
maybe we did. Yeah,
previously.
I
Yes.
mentioned it quite a lot on the podcast, so apologies,
Yeah.
listeners. But I think it's brilliant, um, and the protector is one of the parts.
Mm, mm,
So when you say the name internal family systems, it sounds like a therapy for a family,
mhm,
and that's where it came from.
mhm,
And it's also something that you we can look at just from ourselves
mhm,
because it's about the relationships between different parts of us.
mm,
By different parts of us, it means the 10 year you referred to the 10-year-old part, right? So there's a relationship between the 10-year-old part and the 16-year-old part
mhm,
or whatever. Or for me, there's a relationship between the 5-week-old part, right?
mhm.
When I handed over, placed, relinquished, and then the 10-year-old kid that got bullied for
Right.
really badly bullied on scout camp, and then the 10 to 12, the 9 to 12-year-old kid that got bullied in for other stuff in different
Mhm.
parts, right? So there's the different parts of us, but I'm pretty sure that one of the parts is called a protector part.
Mm, that makes sense.
um, and the genius of the work is it's a psycho-spiritual model.
Mm,
So you're talking about being spiritual
mhm.
earlier on. What do you mean by spiritual?
Well, I believe we're more than just flesh. I believe that we have a spirit. I believe that we were created. We're created beings, created for purpose, and community with others. I believe that we were created to worship the Creator,
Yeah,
not in a dogmatic religious sense, but in a I believe that obviously the Creator cares very deeply for us. Um, so yeah, I don't feel like we can be divorced from that spiritual side of ourselves. I think that is our core, the reality of who we are,
okay,
without the ego,
yeah.
without all of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
without the ego.
Hmm.
I happened to look this up a couple of weeks ago, and it ties in with the first thing that you said, actually.
Uh-huh.
So, spiritual, I think it said non-physical.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
more than flesh is
Right.
another way of saying non-physical-ish.
Right.
To,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Richard Schwartz there is the IFS guy, right? He talks about an uppercase S
Hmm.
stuff, which would be the core
Hmm.
that you refer to
Hmm.
without an ego.
Hmm.
And he would say that, or he does try, does say that that core is can't be damaged.
Mm. Interesting.
Do you agree with that? Or to what extent do you agree with it? Do you
Tell,
disagree with it?
tell me more about copy damaged.
Can't be damaged.
Can't be damaged.
Sorry, yeah,
Okay.
can't be
Yes.
damaged.
Oh, our core can't be damaged. Ooh, wow. I don't know. I don't know. Wow, that's hmm. I would have to delve into that more and hear more about why he says that or what his reasoning is for that because I want to say yes, I agree with that, but then there's an element of feeling that challenges it. But I also know that feelings are not always reality. So that's a bit of a you've stumped me. I don't know. I don't know. I would have to have time to process that. Um, yeah. Does he say why? I mean, what his reason behind saying that?
He he doesn't he doesn't talk a lot about the
Mm-hmm.
core.
He just lets us sit in that
He talks
tension.
he talks far more.
Uh-huh.
He talks far more about the parts than he does about the core.
Okay.
And I came up with a metaphor for this.
Uh-huh.
So have you ever played Trivial Pursuit?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you know that you get that little what do you call
Mm-hmm.
that thing, that disc thing that
I call it the pie piece. It looks
the
like a
pie
pie.
piece? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But what's the circular thing?
It's like a wheel almost,
Yeah,
or
okay, the
yeah,
wheel, right?
yeah.
So the wheel is the core in my metaphor. This isn't Richard Schwartz's metaphor. This is mine, right?
Okay.
The wheel is the core,
Okay.
and the parts are what you call the cheese,
Okay.
right? And according to my metaphor and my philosophy,
Right.
the trauma is in the parts.
Mm.
It's in the cheese,
Mm-hmm.
not in the core, which is the wheel.
Okay. That makes sense.
And that's how I see uh, trauma. So
Right.
the
Right.
ego, all the cheese, all the
Right.
cheeses, they're all ego.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes
There's
sense.
no ego. There's no ego in the wheel.
Okay.
And you said the core is without ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm saying the core is the wheel. You're saying the core is without ego. I'm
Mm-hmm.
agreeing with you. And in
Mm-hmm.
my understanding, I'm saying that the cheese is without ego. Sorry, got it wrong.
Yes.
The circle is without ego.
Right. I'm with you. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Which is why we can heal and we can
Well, heal. Well, how would you express what would healing mean to you?
healing. I don't think it means that what happened didn't happen. It's not like we forget necessarily, or, in our body, we get a laceration and we heal and there's a scar that we can see, but it's healed, but there's still a scar there. So healing means that
But
it
there's more to us than our flesh, though, right?
true, true. So, I mean, if we're getting super, super deep and we're talking about our spiritual core and the ego as separate and what is just kind of put there, um, it's healing in that sense would be more of a deliverance or a release of whatever that is. I don't know. It's developing in my mind as we talk.
Yeah. And one of the first things that we're talking about was ego
Hmm.
as behavior,
Yeah, and I do
right?
think that we can release ourselves of elements of that ego and not carry it anymore. I do believe that.
Because the reason I said it was activity is because looking back on my notes, you said it was a self
Mhm.
protective measure,
Yes. Yes.
which to me is something that we do, not
Right.
something that we are.
Hmm. Yeah. But I
So,
guess it's like at what point is it possible in this fleshly body to get to that true point of healing? That's the question, I guess. Like while we're in this body, while we're living as a human in this life, I don't know. I don't know. Is it possible to be completely free from the ego and those things? I don't know.
I don't know either. But
The mystery of life.
well, that is a mystery.
Yeah,
But I do know we can have more moments of felt oneness.
absolutely.
Like, and if we have more moments of felt oneness, then we're going in the right direction.
Yes.
It's like a hot or warmer game. What is it as a kid? You know, when you're playing a hot or warmer game or something blind, somebody's blind. Is it blind man's buff or something?
Oh, I forgot about
Hot,
that
hot,
game.
hotter, warmer. You know, you're getting
Yeah.
warmer
Oh,
or
yeah.
colder. Getting warmer
Yes.
or colder,
Yes.
right? So more moments of more
Yes.
moments of felt oneness to me is getting warmer.
Yes.
Whether there is an absolute point,
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
I don't think there is.
Well, it's like, have you heard that phrase? Like we're walking each other home. We're the more that we can connect with others and create that sense of belonging and less of that other feeling, I think that can bring tremendous healing to people. Um, things
And
like,
we've been home for the last hour.
yeah, yes, for sure. Yes. And it's finding those people who are willing to have those conversations because that's my place of tension in this world is living on the surface, like in that shallow, yeah, it's finding people who are willing to swim in the deep end, to be real and authentic as they possibly can, um, and to bring a sense of safety and love to others, so that they can do the same. It's a gift. It's a gift that we can give to other people for sure. And can be just a little drop of healing, in those moments for another person. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chasity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, listeners. I was going to ask you, Chasity. I sometimes do this. Not. Have you got an idea of what we could call this episode of the podcast?
Hmm. Um, huh. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
I was just going to use the last
processing.
thing.
There is so much that
There's so
just
much, yeah.
happened.
I was just going with the last thing that you said,
Okay.
walking each other home.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I think that's great.
Thanks, listeners. I hope you've enjoyed an hour of homeness,
Yes.
home time.
Thank you, Simon. This has been wonderful.
I've loved it too. Thanks, listeners. We hope you've loved it too. Bye.